Hello friends, this is Worm, and welcome back to another What If Wednesday, the series where we talk about wacky, wild, and weird what ifs of Destiny 2. And this episode is brought on by a viewer by the name of Ali Snake, or Ollie Snake. I'm not exactly sure how you say it, so if you want to correct me down there in the comments, go ahead. But with that being said, Ollie Snake last week basically said that he misses the Destiny 1 scopes, and the fact that there were just different scopes in D1. And I started thinking about it, and I really had to reach far back into my memory vault, because the reality is it's been years since I played Destiny 1. Like, it's been 7 or 8 years, something like that, since I've played Destiny 1. But I do recall that many different weapons had a variety of scopes. Now, obviously in Destiny 2, many weapons, they have different scopes. Something like Twilight Oath and say Widow's Bite, they have different scopes than something like Cloud Strike or something like Mercurial Overreach and stuff like that. But I think what Ollie Snake is trying to get across here is the customizable scopes that we had back in Destiny 1. Now, of course, we never got these, the ability to change our reticle colors or, our scope shape or anything like that. But there were different scopes. You had, on snipers especially, you had things like the Eagle Eye scope, which had just a massive amount of zoom, very high range, very accurate. I think it was a massive zoom, like 6, 7, or 8 times zoom, something crazy like that. But you also had the short gaze scope that could roll on snipers, which was very low zoom. And he's kind of right. Like I said, I'd forgotten about these. Plus, there were some weapons that had some really unique scopes. I remember there was a blue sniper rifle. Don't remember what it was, but it had a scope very similar to Succession. How it wasn't like an actual scope, it just had these kind of like open ring sights, so to speak. But yeah, with that being said, I kind of wanted to entertain the idea of what if Bungie brought in customizable scopes or a more variety in scopes. Now, first of all, let's go back in time just a little bit, because I think that it's important to remember that at one point in Destiny 2, most weapons did roll with different scopes. Some weapons had barrel columns, and some weapons had scope columns. Now, most weapons just have barrel columns. So if you get a weapon with a scope column, it's probably an old weapon, or it's probably one in a million, really, because they don't, for some reason, they stopped making these varying scopes. But an example of a scope that can, or a weapon that can roll with different scopes, is the Cartesian Coordinate. Cartesian Coordinate, by the way, if you haven't already, you need to go pick up the God Roll that Banshee's selling before, I don't remember exactly what time Banshee resets, but you need to go pick it up very soon, because it is a fantastic roll. But with that being said, Cartesian Coordinate is an example of a weapon that has different scopes. You can get a low zoom, very open sights that lowers your range, or you can get a more boxy scope with a higher zoom that increases your overall range. Now, I think the reason why Bungie moved away from making weapons with these different scope variations is because at the time that they were introducing these weapons, zoom had a direct effect on your accuracy and your range. And of course, recently they decoupled that. So if you had a weapon like a what was the auto rifle called? There was a Suros auto rifle that could get scopes on it, and you could get a long zoom scope, and it made it an absolute shredder, because you had more accuracy, you had better recoil control with this scope. Like it was a very, very strong aspect. They moved away from that because they didn't like how strong it was and how it just, everybody wanted one specific scope. Now with barrel options, yeah, like certain weapon archetypes, like shotguns, for example, you want rifled barrel, but not every barrel is the exact same. They all have difference in stats and stuff like that. But I think the big thing was zoom, because magazines affect stats, barrels affect stats, scopes also affected stats, but the one thing scopes affected that didn't affect anything else, or that no other aspects affected, was, of course, like I said, that zoom. Now that they've decoupled it, I don't see why we don't have more scope options, or straight up the ability to customize our scopes. Now, I want to start with talking about just different scopes on a weapon. And what if Bungie put on, and every single weapon, maybe going forward, or maybe every single weapon in the past, you got a third, or I guess technically a 5th column of perks, excluding origin traits. You had your barrel perk, you had your magazine perk, and now you have a scope perk, so that any weapon can be changed to have any scope that you want. Then, of course, you have your first perk column and your second perk column. I think that would be such a neat idea. As I'm playing it out in my head, I don't see how it would be too busted, because, of course, you could even further maximize certain stats. Say you have a auto rifle that you just want maximum range on, or a pulse rifle that you want maximum range on, you could get rifled barrel in that barrel column. You could get, a perk in the magazine column that does something beneficial to you. I don't think there's any range. Or no, I take it back. You get ricochet rounds. You get ricochet rounds or accurized rounds on your pulse rifle that you look for. Then you can also get a scope, so you can have a high zoom pulse rifle where the recoil is a little bit more controlled. I think that would be a neat idea. And again, like, this is me just spitballing. I don't know how it would affect the overall balance of the game, if it would make it, where certain weapons were more powerful than others. But if every single weapon is having the ability to roll with different scopes, like, it would lead to a better loot chase. Number one, because that's a huge thing in Destiny. Loot chase is a huge aspect of Destiny that we all love, and I think it would just add on to that. It'd make it more fun to chase the god roll, because now instead of a 4 out or a 5 out of 5 god roll, or whatever it is, 4 out of 4 god roll, I can't remember what you want to call it. Now you have a 5 out of 5 god roll, or if you want to go crazy, instead of having a 8 out of 8 god roll, you now have a 10 out of 10 god roll or something like that, considering all the perks. But I think that would be a neat idea to bring to Destiny 2, just to allow players more customization over their weapons. Now, on this note, I also wanted to just touch briefly on customization. I would also love to see Bungie have it so that barrel perks and magazine perks actually change the look of your weapon, because that was another really cool aspect of scopes, is that when you had a long zoom scope on, it would actually change the scope on top of your weapon. Or if you had a short zoom scope on, it would change the look of that scope on your gun. And I thought that was such a neat element that Bungie introduced to the game, and I would love to see that happen with magazines and barrels. But anyways, moving on from there, I also want to talk about customization of scopes. We are in a point in Destiny 2 where customization has been growing over the years. At first it was, you could put on any armor set you wanted, but it was mismatched. You could only have one shader equipped at a time. Then now we got to a point where our whole mod system is customizable. We have a variety of different, subclass traits. We can transmog ourselves however the heck we want. Why not give us the ability to customize things like our scopes, and not like the zoom and stuff like that, but maybe scope color, maybe change the red dot to a green dot or a blue dot, maybe, have different scope shapes that we can apply. We have the round scope shape, or we have more rectangular, maybe a more triangular if you wanted to go that route. Just having more shapes to our scopes and more customization would be super cool, and I would love to see that. And when you're ADSing, have different actual reticle shapes. I think most snipers have a the circular one, but something like Father's Sins, for example, Father's Sins has a big fat reticle, and I love it personally, but maybe you don't like it. Maybe you really like Father's Sins, you like the aesthetic, you like the perks that it can get and stuff like that, but you really don't like that chunky reticle, and you want to change it to a small, more concise reticle. Like, Bungie, give us the ability to do that. At this point, I don't see why changing the reticle on a weapon has any effect on the actual gunplay itself. Outside of maybe if you want to try to monetize, something like, for example, Collective Obligation. Collective Obligation, its standard look with that horrible, ugly scope that blocks out like half your screen is terrible. But you go by the ornament, whatever it's called, Infinality, I think is the name of the ornament. You go by the ornament for it, and it removes that whole scope. Now you just have a smaller, still asymmetric, but still it's smaller, easier to see scope, kind of like that. That's the only reason why I think Bungie hasn't introduced the ability to customize our scopes. But that's, we're not going that far. We're not talking about changing the whole weapon model. We're just talking about ADSing. You got an auto rifle, maybe you don't want it to have a dot, maybe you want it to have a ring, or maybe you want it to have a chevron, or maybe you want it to have a little tiny triangle. Give us the ability to change that. That's not much. It's not gonna shift the entire performance of our weapons. It's not going to break the game by allowing us to change the color of our reticle from red to blue or to yellow or something like that. And especially because I think a lot of people in a lot of other games, you have the ability to change the color of your reticle, and a lot of people really like that, because you run around, for example, in Destiny currently, my reticle, my hipfire reticle is green. I think I have it set to green, and of course when it's on an enemy, it's red. I do this because the white blended in way too much, but the bright green really popped out for me. And maybe we could add that to various, to all scopes in the game that have a red dot sight, so that if players, for some reason, it has a red dot and they have difficulty with the red dot, they don't have they're not colorblind, but they have difficulty with a red dot, they can change to a blue dot or a green dot or a white dot or yellow, whatever color. I think for an accessibility feature, it would be there, but also just a nice customization. Plus, I mean, if you wanted to go crazy, like give us the ability to, you know, customize the actual ring around the side of the scope. You know, some weapons have this, you know, kind of an aura around the edge of the scope when you're ADSing. Allow us to change that to something cool. You know, just for aesthetic purposes, but hey, it looks cool, it's unique. I think that, Ali Snake, I think this was actually a fantastic topic this week, because honestly, Bungie should bring back these scopes. Bungie should 100% bring back, you know, different scopes, and they should allow us to start customizing. Like you've really given me a lot of stuff to talk about here, but yeah, that's gonna be it. I want to hear your thoughts on it though. Of course, with the idea of Destiny 1 scopes being so different, like do you want to see that come back? And even early Destiny 2 as well. Early Destiny 2, we had, you know, different scopes for different weapons. Do you want to see that come back? Do you like the idea of having that additional column so that you can change your barrel, your magazine, and your scope options? And of course, what do you think about scope customization? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, if you liked today's video, drop a like, helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe, because Riven would greatly appreciate it. And do me a favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. I'll see y'all next time, guys. Bye for now.